Hello, I'm Peter. I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's journey. Do you believe that everything in this life has a solution, that no matter how heavy the burden or how bitter the storm, things eventually pass? If you're finding that hard to believe right now, stay with me. I want to take you back in time to a place where people faced the impossible every single day, and yet they found a way through. Tonight, we're traveling somewhere very far from your warm room. We're going to a place where cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a living thing. Where sleep wasn't rest, it was survival. Where the nights stretched so long that men forgot what daylight even looked like. Imagine this with me now. You're standing on a wooden deck barely wider than your bed. Beneath you, black water spreads endlessly in every direction. Above you, winter stars pierce the sky like splinters of glass. The air is so cold, it doesn't just chill your skin. It burns your throat with every breath. Your fingers ache inside thick wool gloves. Ice crystals form on your beard, your eyelashes, and the rim of your hood. This is the North Atlantic in winter. This is where Viking sailors lived for weeks, crossing between Norway and Greenland, pushing toward lands they called Vinland. There were no cabins below deck, and no fires to warm frozen hands. Just 30 men pressed together in the dark, knowing that if the cold claimed you in your sleep, you simply wouldn't wake up. You might think you wouldn't survive this. Most people wouldn't. But these sailors did. Night after night, they found ways to rest in conditions that would kill a modern person in hours. How they endured reveals something beautiful about the human spirit. Something we've nearly forgotten. Hello, I'm Peter Miller. I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's journey. Do you believe that everything in this life has a solution, that no matter how heavy the burden or how bitter the storm, things eventually pass? If you're finding that hard to believe right now, stay with me. I want to take you back in time to a place where people faced the impossible every single day, and yet they found a way through. Tonight, we're traveling somewhere very far from your warm room. The deepest part of the night settles over the ship like a second ocean. You open your eyes, though you're not sure you ever truly closed them. Sleep and waking have blurred into something else out here, something that doesn't have a name. The sky above is a dome of impossible black, so dark it seems to press down on the ship, and yet it's alive with stars. More stars than you've ever seen. They don't twinkle the way they do on land. Here they burn steady and cold like distant fires that will never warm you. The ship rocks in a rhythm that never stops. Even on calm nights like this, the North Atlantic breathes, and the longship rises and falls with each exhalation. You feel it in your stomach, in the base of your skull, in the way your body has learned to sway without thinking. After weeks at sea, you've become part of the ship's motion. When you finally step onto solid ground again, if you step onto solid ground again, the earth will feel like it's moving beneath you for days. Around you, forms lie, scattered across the deck like driftwood after a storm. Your crewmates, 30 men, maybe more depending on the ship. Some are curled into tight balls, trying to make themselves as small as possible. Others lie stretched out, too exhausted to care about position anymore. A few sit propped against the ship's side, watching the stars with eyes that don't blink often enough. You can't always tell who's asleep and who's just waiting for their turn at the oar or the watch. The cold at this hour is different from the cold of evening. It's patient. It's been working on you all night, finding every gap in your clothing, every place where skin meets air. Your toes went numb hours ago. You can still move them if you think about it, curl them inside your boots, but you can't feel them anymore. That's actually a mercy. When you can still feel them, the ache is unbearable. Your breath leaves your mouth in clouds so thick they look solid in the starlight. Ice crystals form in your beard. With each exhalation, tiny white flowers, blooming and melting and blooming again. The moisture from your breath freezes on the wool pulled across your face, making the fabric stiff and strange against your lips. You've learned not to breathe too deeply through your nose. The air is sharp enough to make your lungs hurt. Somewhere near the mast, someone coughs. It's a wet, rattling sound that goes on too long. You know that cough. You've heard it before on other voyages. It starts as nothing, just a tickle from breathing cold air. Then it settles deeper. In a week, maybe two, the man coughing will be too weak to take his turn at the oars. In a month, if you haven't reached land, he might not be coughing anymore at all. But right now, in this moment, you're alive. The ship is sound. The stars are clear enough to navigate by. The wind hasn't picked up into one of those screaming gales that can drive ice spray across the deck hard enough to cut skin. You've learned to be grateful for nights like this, merely cold instead of catastrophic. The deck beneath you is slick with frost. You can see it glittering in the starlight, a thin skin of ice coating the oak planks. During the day, when the weak winter sun manages to show itself, the frost melts into a treacherous wet sheen. But at night, everything freezes solid. The ropes, the mast, the wooden pegs holding the ship together. Even the sea spray that crashed over the side earlier has frozen into strange sculptural forms along the gunwale, like claws reaching up from the deep. You shift your weight carefully, trying to ease the ache in your hip where it's been pressed against hard wood for hours. The movement sends a cascade of small pains through your body. Your lower back is locked into a knot. Your shoulder feels like someone drove a spike through it. Your knee joint grinds when you bend it. This is normal. This is every night. You've stopped expecting comfort. Now you just manage discomfort the way a farmer manages poor soil, coaxing what little you can from what you have. Near your head, you can hear the bilge water sloshing below the deck planks. It's always there, that sound. The ship takes on water, constantly seeping through the overlapping oak planks that make up the hull. During the day, someone has to bail it out with a wooden scoop, tossing bucketfuls back into the sea. At night, it just accumulates, rising slowly in the darkness beneath your sleeping body. The water down there is colder than the sea. It's been trapped in shadow, mixing with the salt that's crystallized on everything, creating a brine so frigid it makes the ocean itself seem warm. You can smell it sometimes, that bilge water. A sour, ancient smell of wood rot and salt, and things growing in the dark. It mixes with the other smells of the ship, the lanolin in the wool clothes everyone wears, the fish oil rubbed into leather boots, the faint, acrid scent of unwashed bodies pressed too close for too long. After a while, you stop noticing. It becomes the smell of life, the smell of survival, as natural as the salt air. Above you, the sail hangs limp against the mast. In daylight, it's an impressive thing, that sail. Woven from thousands of hours of labor, hundreds of sheep worth of wool dyed red with madder root or left natural gray. It can catch wind and drive the ship forward at speeds that make the spray fly. But at night, especially on calm nights, it's lowered part way or left to hang loose, just a dark shape blocking out a section of stars. Some men sleep beneath it, using it as a kind of roof, a symbolic shelter, even though it does nothing to stop the cold. The helmsman is awake, of course. You can see him at the stern, a darker shadow against the dark sky, one hand on the steering oar. He doesn't move much, just makes tiny adjustments, keeping the ship oriented to the stars following the same latitude they've been following for days. North Star to the right at this angle, Orion climbing in the east. These are the signposts of the winter sea, more reliable than any landmark. He might be singing the helmsman. You can't quite hear it from here, but sometimes they do very softly. Old songs about the sea, about ships that sailed before this one, about men who didn't come home. Not sad songs exactly, just songs that acknowledge the truth of where you are and what you're doing. Songs that say, yes, this is hard. Yes, this is dangerous. Yes, we might die, and we're doing it anyway. A sound cuts through the quiet. Metal on wood. Someone near the bow is scraping frost off their shield with a knife, trying to clear the ice that's built up on the iron rim. It's a losing battle. The frost will be back in an hour. But it gives hands something to do, keeps fingers moving, maintains the illusion of control over this small floating world. Your own shield is somewhere nearby, propped against the side of the ship, part of the overlapping wall of shields that runs along the gunwale. They serve multiple purposes, these shields. During raids, obviously, they're protection. During storms, they're lashed together to create a barrier against the waves. And at night, in weather worse than this, men huddle behind them to break the wind. Right now, they're just frozen circles of wood and leather decorated with patterns you can't see in the dark, but know by heart. Your shield has a red serpent painted on it. You've traced its curves with your fingers so many times you could draw it from memory. Something moves at the edge of your vision. You turn your head slowly, careful not to disturb the small pocket of warmth you've managed to create inside your cloak. It's just another sailor, one of the younger ones, climbing carefully over sleeping forms to reach the side of the ship. You know what he's doing? Everyone does it eventually. He leans over the rail and relieves himself into the black water below. The sound seems impossibly loud in the stillness. Steam rises from the stream, visible proof of the heat still trapped inside living bodies. When he's done, he stands there for a moment, looking out at the sea. Maybe he's thinking about home. Maybe he's thinking about nothing at all. Maybe he's just delaying the moment when he has to lie back down on the frozen deck and try to convince his body to sleep for another hour or two. He returns to his spot, moving with the careful precision of someone who knows that a misplaced foot could mean stepping on a hand, efface someone's carefully arranged bedding. He settles back down, and the ship returns to its collection of quiet sounds. Water against hull rope, creaking wind, whispering across the surface of the sea. You close your eyes again, not because you think you'll sleep, but because it's easier than keeping them open. The cold is a constant pressure now, all around you, above you, below you, inside you. It's trying to make you part of itself, trying to turn your warmth into its own temperature. Your body fights back without your permission, shivering in small waves, burning precious energy to stay alive. This is midnight on the winter sea, the hardest hour, the coldest hour. The hour when the night feels like it will never end, when the memory of daylight seems like a story you heard once, but can't quite believe anymore. And yet, you're still here. Your heart is still beating. Your breath is still rising in clouds toward the indifferent stars. Somewhere deep inside your layers of wool and leather and fur, there's still a core of warmth, still a spark that refuses to go out. The ship rocks, the stars burn, the cold presses down, and you wait for dawn the way your ancestors waited, the way sailors have always waited, with nothing but patience and the stubborn human refusal to let the darkness have the final word. The watch changes. You hear it before you see it. The soft grunt of someone rising, the creak of stiff joints, the shuffle of boots on frost-covered planks. Somewhere near the mast, a man sits up and begins the slow process of unwrapping himself from his sleeping arrangement. He moves like someone much older than he is, though he might be 20, might be 30. Out here, age stops meaning what it does on land. Everyone ages in the same direction, toward stiffness, toward cold, toward the careful movements of someone whose body hurts all the time. The man being relieved, the one who's been standing watch, makes his way toward the center of the ship. He doesn't speak. There's nothing to report. The sea is the same as it was an hour ago, 2 hours ago. Dark, cold, alive in its own ancient way, but indifferent to the wooden shell floating on its surface. As he passes you, you can see the frost that's accumulated on his cloak, white and thick along the shoulders and hood, where his breath has been freezing and refreezing all night. His beard is white with it, too, making him look like an old man. Though when the sun comes up and the ice melts, you'll see he's younger than you are. He finds his spot, lowers himself down with a sigh that sounds like it comes from the bottom of his lungs, and pulls a piece of sealskin over his legs. Within minutes, he's motionless. Whether he's sleeping or just conserving energy, you can't tell. The new watchman takes his position at the stern. You watch him settle in, adjusting his stance, checking the stars, making the small calculations that keep the ship on course. He wraps his cloak tighter, tucks his hands into his armpits, and begins the long, cold vigil that will last until someone else relieves him. This is how the night is divided. Not into neat hours, like we measure time now, but into watches, into shifts, into the amount of time a man can stand at the steering oar before the cold makes his hands too numb to feel the wood, before his judgment starts to blur, before he needs to be replaced. Some nights when the weather is brutal, a watch might be half the length. Some nights when a man is strong and the sea is calm, he might stand twice as long. It's not about the time. It's about what the body can endure. You become aware of other movements, now small adjustments happening all across the ship. A hand emerging from under a cloak to pull a hood tighter. Someone rolling from one side to the other, trying to find a position where fewer bones press against hard wood. A pair of men shifting closer together, sharing warmth without acknowledging it, without making it into something that requires words. Near the bow, 3 men have arranged themselves into a tight cluster, sleeping in a kind of heap that from a distance looks like a single creature with multiple heads. This isn't affection. This is mathematics. 3 bodies produce more warmth than one. The man in the middle, squeezed between his companions, has the best position. He's sharing heat from both sides, creating a small pocket of relatively warm air. The men on the outside gain less, but even a little is better than none. Tomorrow night, they'll rotate positions, Everyone gets a turn in the middle. Everyone gets a turn on the edge. You've done this yourself many times. There's a particular intimacy to it that's hard to describe to someone who's never experienced it. You can feel the other man's heartbeat through the layers of clothing. You can hear the small catches in his breathing, the way he shifts his weight, the grinding of his stomach when he's hungry. You smell his unwashed body, his breath, his fear when the weather turns violent. And he smells yours. There's no privacy in survival, no dignity in cold, just the animal fact of bodies trying to stay alive. The ship's timber groans. It's a sound you've learned to interpret the way a farmer learns to read clouds, or a blacksmith learns to judge the color of hot iron. This particular groan means the ship is flexing, bending slightly as a swell passes underneath. It's normal. The longship is built to flex, built to move with the sea rather than fight it. Oak planks overlap each other in what the shipbuilders call clinker style, each one riveted to the next, but with enough give that the whole structure can twist and bend without breaking. It's brilliant, really. You've heard the shipwrights talk about it in the boatyards, explaining it to younger men learning the craft. They say a rigid ship would shatter in the North Atlantic. The waves here are too big, too powerful, too unpredictable. So instead, they build ships that breathe with the sea, that bend and flex, and return to shape over and over for years, if they're well maintained. Of course, this means that as you lie here, trying to sleep, you can feel every movement, every twist, every groan of wood under stress. The ship is alive beneath you, and you're just a passenger in its long conversation with the ocean. Somewhere in the middle of the ship, a man coughs again. It's the same one from before you think. The sound is wet and harsh, and it goes on for a long time before it finally subsides into ragged breathing. Nobody says anything. What would they say? Everyone knows what that cough means. Everyone knows there's nothing to be done about it, except hope it doesn't get worse. Hope his body is strong enough to fight whatever is settling into his lungs. Hope you make landfall before it matters. You shift your attention to your own body, taking inventory the way you've learned to do. Toes numb, but you can still wiggle them. Fingers cold, but functional. Face, the exposed part around your eyes, stings from the cold, but there's no deep pain that would indicate frostbite. Core still warm enough, though you can feel the cold trying to work its way in through every seam and gap in your clothing. You're managing. That's all you can ask for out here. Not comfort, just management. The wool you're wrapped in is a marvel in its own way, though you didn't appreciate it until you spent your first winter at sea. This isn't the refined soft wool of rich men's clothes. This is vadmal, the thick, greasy wool cloth that's been the backbone of northern survival for generations. It's woven so tightly you can barely see between the threads, and it's full of lanolin, the natural oil from sheep, which gives it an ability to repel water that still seems like magic, even though you understand it's just the nature of the material. When a wave breaks over the side of the ship and you're drenched in freezing seawater, this wool doesn't absorb it the way other fabrics would. The water beads on the surface, runs off, leaves you damp but not soaked. And even when it is wet, the wool still insulates, still traps air, still holds heat. You've seen men survive in wet wool who would have died in wet linen or cotton. It's why every sailor wears it, why the production of wool is one of the most important industries back home, why hundreds of sheep and thousands of hours of labor go into clothing a single crew. Over the wool, you have layers of other things. A cloak lined with rabbit fur. A hood that can be pulled so far forward it creates a cave of warm air around your face. Sealskin leggings that break the wind. Leather boots stuffed with dried grass for insulation. And on the coldest nights, some men wrap themselves in whole sealskins for side in creating a cocoon that holds heat so effectively you can almost forget you're on a frozen ship in the middle of the ocean. Almost, but never quite. A sound drifts across the water from somewhere far away. At first, you think you imagined it, but then you hear it again. A low, mournful sound that might be a whale, or might be ice grinding against ice, or might be nothing at all. Sound travels strangely over the sea at night. Sometimes you hear things that seem impossibly close, but are actually miles away. Other times, a man can be shouting from the bow, and you can barely hear him at the stern. The air does something to sound bends. It carries it, plays tricks with it. Your mind starts to wander in that particular way it does when you're exhausted, but can't sleep. You think about home. Not the home you left, but the home you hope to build when this voyage is over. If this voyage is ever over. A house with proper walls. A fire that burns all night. A bed raised off the ground with furs piled thick enough that you sink into them. Warm food. Bread that's not weeks old and hard as stone. Ale that hasn't gone sour. The simple, almost forgotten luxury of being warm enough to remove your cloak without immediately starting to shiver. But then you pull your mind back. It's dangerous to think too much about comfort when you're this cold. It makes the present worse, makes the ship feel smaller, makes the night feel longer. Better to stay in the moment to accept what is, rather than what might be. This is a lesson the sea teachers quickly want less. Endure more. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. You know these stars now. You've spent enough nights staring at them that they've become familiar friends. There's the Big Dipper, which the old men call Karlvang, the men's wagon. There's the Little Dipper, Gvenavang, the women's wagon. There's Orion's Belt, which some call the fishermen, three bright points standing in a row like men working at a net. These stars don't just decorate the sky. They're tools, guides, the only map you have in this featureless expanse of water. The helmsman is using them right now, keeping the ship aligned to their pattern, making tiny adjustments to the steering oar. He knows that, as long as the North Star stays in the same position relative to the ship, they're maintaining their latitude, following the invisible line across the ocean that will eventually lead to land. It's navigation by constancy, by patience, by the willingness to trust that the world is ordered in ways you can't see but can nevertheless rely on. You wonder if he's tired. Of course he's tired. Everyone is tired. But there's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from responsibility, from knowing that if you make a mistake, if you let your attention wander for too long, the ship could drift off course, and you might sail past your destination into empty ocean, into a cold that's even more absolute than this one. A gust of wind sweeps across the deck, sudden and sharp. It cuts through your layers, like they're not even there, finding skin-stealing heat. You curl tighter, tucking your face deeper into your hood. The gust passes. The air settles back into its previous stillness. But now you're colder than you were a moment ago, and getting that heat back will take time, will cost energy you don't have to spare. This is the arithmetic of winter at sea. Every loss is slow to recover. Every bit of warmth is precious. Every decision, from when to move, to when to stay still, to when to eat your ration, and when to save it for later, all of it is calculated against the cold, against the finite amount of energy your body contains, against the simple fact that if you run out, there's no more. The ship rocks, the stars burn, the watch stands silent at the stern, and across the deck, 30 men lie in the darkness, breathing in unison with the sea, waiting for the night to end, waiting for the dawn that may or may not come, waiting with the patience of people who have learned that survival is not dramatic. It's just this staying alive minute by minute, hour by hour, through the simple, stubborn refusal to let go. Before the deep night settled, there was evening. That time just after the last grey light faded from the western horizon, when the ship transformed from a vessel in motion to a kind of floating campsite, when the work of sailing gave way to the work of surviving the night ahead. This is when the real preparations happened, the rituals that made the difference between waking up in the morning and not waking up at all. As the light dips, the senses sharpen. You reach for your evening meal, a piece of dried cod hard as the wood beneath you. You tear a strip with your teeth, feeling the fibers give way. The briny, pungent taste of salt-cured fish dissolves on your tongue, sharp and ancient. It is a flavor that speaks of the deep mineral sting that lingers on your dry lips. This saltiness mixes with the heavy, earthy scent of wet wool and the lanolin oil from your cloak, a smell that is musk-like, almost animalistic. As you chew, the sound of the dry fish snapping in your mouth is amplified by the silence of the sea, a rhythmic crunching that grounds you. You lick the salt from your lips, tasting the ocean's breath condensed into a fine metallic mist. This is the flavor of survival sea salt dried blood and the waxy damp scent of the sheep's coat that keeps the frost from your skin. It is a strangely comforting perfume, the scent of a living creature protecting you from a frozen world. You remember it clearly, though it feels like it happened days ago instead of hours. The way the crew moved with practiced efficiency, each man knowing his role, the choreography of survival performed without discussion because it had been performed 100 times before. First, the sail. If the wind was favorable, they'd keep some of it up-rigged in a way that required minimal attention through the night. But more often, especially in winter, they'd lower it part-way, or take it down entirely, draping the massive wool square across the central section of the ship. This created a kind of tent, a symbolic roof that provided almost no actual warmth, but gave a psychological comfort that mattered more than you'd think. Humans need shelter, even if that shelter is just an illusion. The mind rests easier under a roof, however thin. Beneath this canopy of sail, men would arrange their sleeping spaces. This wasn't random. There was a hierarchy, though not the kind you'd expect. The strongest, the most experienced sailors took positions near the edges, near the sides of the ship where the wind hit hardest. They could endure it better. The younger men, the ones not yet fully adapted to the cold, took spots more toward the middle. And the sick, if there were sick men, they went into the very center, surrounded by the bodies of others, given every possible advantage in their fight against illness and cold. The sea chests, those sturdy wooden boxes that held each man's possessions, became furniture. During the day, they served as seats for the rowers, positioned precisely between the ribs of the ship. At night, they became pillows or barriers to block wind, or platforms to raise sleeping bodies, a few precious inches above the wet deck. You'd see men carefully arranging their cloaks over the chests, creating a slightly less uncomfortable surface to rest a head or a hip. Food came out at this time too. Not a meal in any real sense, just cold provisions from the stores. Hard bread that had to be sucked on before you could bite it. Strips of dried fish that tasted like salt and nothing else. Sometimes on good days, there'd be a bit of cheese or some dried berries mixed with animal fat, a dense cake of calories that sat heavy in the stomach but burned slow and warm through the night. You'd chew slowly, making it last, knowing this might be all you'd get until morning. And you'd drink water from wooden cups rationed carefully because the barrels were limited and there was no way to get more until landfall. The water tasted like the barrel it came from, like oak and faint rot, but it was wet, and that was what mattered. Some men talked during this time. Quiet conversations never loud enough to carry far. Stories from home mostly. Someone's wife had a baby last spring, a boy healthy and strong. Someone else's farm had a good harvest before he left. Small pieces of normal life shared like treasures, reminding everyone that there was a world beyond this ship, beyond this cold, beyond this endless rocking darkness. Others sang. Not full songs usually. Just fragments, verses from old sagas, or sea shanties, or lullabies their mothers sang when they were children. The sound was soft, almost private, but it spread across the ship in a gentle wave, one voice picking up where another left off, creating a low musical murmur that blended with the sound of water against wood. There was something about this evening time, this transition from day to night, that felt almost peaceful. The hard work of sailing was done. The night hadn't yet become brutal. For an hour, maybe two, you could exist in a kind of suspended state, neither comfortable nor in immediate danger, just present in the moment, doing the small things that humans do to maintain their humanity in inhuman conditions. You'd check your weapons. This was important not because you expected to use them in the night, but because the ritual of checking them was soothing. You'd unwrap your sword from its oiled cloth, examine the blade for any spots of rust, wipe it down, wrap it again. You'd inspect your knife, your axe, if you carried one. These tools were extensions of yourself, and keeping them ready felt like keeping yourself ready, like maintaining your ability to face whatever might come. Some men did more elaborate preparations. You'd see them carefully arranging their cloaks into specific configurations, folding them just so, creating layers of insulation that followed principles passed down through generations. There was an art to it, a knowledge of how to trap air, how to position fabric to maximize warmth while minimizing weight. The best sleepers, the men who seemed to suffer least from the cold, they'd spend 20 minutes getting their bedding exactly right, and then they'd sleep better than men who just laid down and pulled a cloak over themselves. The ropes got checked too. Everything that needed to be secured for the night got secured. Loose gear was tied down. The shields along the gunwale were adjusted, overlapped more tightly to create a better windbreak. The steering oar was lashed in position if the sea was calm enough, though someone always stayed near it, ready to grab it if the wind picked up suddenly. Water had to be bailed from the bilge. This was constant, this fight against the sea slowly seeping in through the overlapped planks. Two men with wooden scoops would work in the fading light, tossing bucket after bucket over the side, trying to get ahead of it, knowing they never really could. The bilge would fill again during the night. It always did. But you bailed it anyway, because that's what you did, because stopping was the same as giving up. As the light faded completely, the conversations faded with it. The songs trailed off. The work was done. Men settled into their positions, pulling their layers tight, tucking hands into armpits or between thighs, curling into whatever shape offered the most protection from the cold that was already rising from the deck like a mist. This was the moment of acceptance. The moment when you acknowledged that the next 8 or 10 or 12 hours would be hard, would be cold, would test your ability to endure. But you'd survived it before, you'd survive it again. Probably. Maybe. If your luck held, and your body stayed strong, and the weather didn't turn catastrophic. You'd close your eyes, not because you expected to fall asleep immediately, but because it was time. Time to rest. Time to conserve energy. Time to enter that strange state between waking and sleeping that counted as rest out here, where true deep sleep was rare and precious and dangerous. Because if you slept too deeply, you might not wake up when you needed to, might not hear the shout warning of a sudden wave, might freeze in your sleep without even knowing it was happening. The evening whispers faded into silence. The ship settled into its night rhythm, the creaking of wood and rope, the splash of water, the breathing of 30 men trying to become small, trying to become warm, trying to disappear into whatever dreams the cold would allow them. And then night took over completely, and the real test began. The long, slow hours where all you could do was endure and wait, and trust that morning would eventually come. The way it always had, before the way you desperately needed it to come again. There's a particular technique for sleeping that only makes sense when you've been this cold for this long. You start by finding your spot. Not just any spot, but your spot, the piece of deck you've claimed, through repeated use, the section of oak plank that your body has almost molded itself to over days or weeks. It's next to Halvard on one side and Eric on the other. You don't know their full stories, but you know the shape of their breathing, the sounds they make when they shift in their sleep, the way Halvard sometimes mutters in Old Norse about his goats, and the way Eric's left knee clicks when he bends it. Tonight, like every night, you begin the process of creating what men call the hudfat, the skin blanket. But it's more than that. It's a cocoon, a temporary womb, a pocket of survival. You pull the heavy hide over your head, and suddenly the world of the ship vanishes. Inside this leather tent, the air changes. It becomes thick, warm and heavy with the scent of your own life. You can smell the faint, acrid tang of sweat trapped in layers of fur, the oily richness of the sealskin, and the sweet, dusty smell of the dried grass inside your boots. Every time you exhale, the warm moisture of your breath hits the cold fur, creating a soft, damp heat that hugs your face. Your hands, tucked deep into your armpits, begin to throb with returning blood, a prickly, tingling sensation that ripples up your arms. You focus on the texture of the fur against your cheek. It is coarse, yet strangely soft, each individual hair a tiny pillar of warmth. This is a sensory world, no larger than your own body, a sanctuary where the only sounds are the rhythmic rustle of hide against wool, and the steady, heavy thrum of your own heart echoing in your ears. First layer, you spread your largest cloak flat on the deck wool side down. This creates a barrier, however thin, between your body and the frozen wood. Then comes the sealskin if you have one. Not everyone does, but you traded for this one in Iceland before the crossing gave up good silver for it, and it's proven worth every coin. The skin side faces down the fur side, up, creating a surface that's almost soft. You lower yourself onto this arrangement slowly. Your body aches in so many places that movement has to be calculated. The deck is hard in a way that makes normal ground feel like a feather bed by comparison. Your hip bone finds the same groove it's been finding for weeks, the place where the wood seems slightly worn, though that's probably your imagination. Still, your body believes in this spot has decided this is its place, and there's comfort in that decision, even when there's no physical comfort at all. Halvard shifts beside you. You feel his movement more than see it. He's pulling his own layers tighter, adjusting something near his feet. In a moment, he'll settle into position, and then, without discussion, without acknowledgement, you'll both shift slightly closer. Not touching, not yet, but near enough that the air between your bodies becomes shared air, becomes something that can be warmed by two sets of breath instead of one. On your other side, Eric is already curled into what you think of as his shrimp position, knees pulled up to his chest, arms wrapped around his shins, head tucked down. He's smaller than you, smaller than most of the crew, and he feels the cold worse. But he's also smart about it. It knows how to make himself compact, knows how to turn his body into its own shelter. You arrange the next layer. This is a heavy wool blanket, thick and smelling of sheep and sea, and the lanolin that makes it water resistant. You pull it over yourself, tucking it around your sides, creating a seal against the cold air. Then comes another seal skin. This one's smaller, just large enough to cover your torso and head. The fur is incredibly dense, hundreds of thousands of tiny hairs that trap air and hold warmth in a way that still amazes you every time you think about it. Your boots stay on. This is important. You learned early never to remove your boots at night, no matter how much you want to, no matter how good it would feel to let your feet breathe. The cold will attack your feet first, and frost-bitten toes are a death sentence out here. So the boots stay laced tight, stuffed with dried grass that you change every few days when it gets too compacted or wet, and you wiggle your toes inside them periodically through the night, keeping the blood moving, keeping the tissue alive. Now comes the part that requires trust. Halvard shifts closer. You feel his shoulder press against yours through the layers. On your other side, Eric uncurls slightly, pressing his back against your hip. And from somewhere behind you, you feel another warmth approaching. It's Snorri, or maybe Bjorn, one of the older men who's learned that shame is a luxury you can't afford at sea. He settles in behind Halvard, creating a chainer line of bodies sharing heat. This is the Hudfat in its true form. Not one man wrapped in hides, but several men becoming one organism, one heat-generating unit. Your body warmth seeps out through the layers and meets Halvard's warmth, and Eric's warmth, and Snorri's warmth, and in the tiny spaces between your bodies, the temperature rises. Not much, maybe a few degrees. But out here, a few degrees is the difference between sleeping and shivering, between rest and exhaustion, between surviving the night and not. There's an intimacy to this that men on land wouldn't understand. You can feel Halvard's heartbeat through the wool. It's slightly faster than yours, a quick, steady rhythm that reminds you he's younger than you thought, still carrying some of the nervous energy of youth despite the grey in his beard. You can hear Eric's breathing on your other side, the slight whistle in his nose. the catch in his throat that might mean he's getting sick, or might just mean the cold air has irritated his airways. Someone's stomach growls. You can't tell whose. Maybe yours. The sound is surprisingly loud in the quiet, a long rumbling complaint that speaks to days of half rations and hard work. A few men chuckle softly. It's funny in the way that shared suffering is funny, the kind of humor that only makes sense when you're all equally miserable. You adjust your hood, pulling it forward until your face is almost completely covered. Just a small opening remains for breathing. Your breath immediately starts to warm the space inside the hood, creating a microclimate around your head. Ice begins to form on the wool, where your breath hits it tiny crystals that catch what little light exists. You've learned to breathe slowly, to not exhale too forcefully, because if you do, the moisture freezes faster and the fabric gets stiff and uncomfortable. Your hands are the hardest thing. They don't want to stay warm no matter what you do. Right now, they're tucked under your armpits. Fingers spread wide, trying to absorb heat from your core. You can feel your pulse in your fingertips, a small throb that tells you the blood is still moving, still fighting the cold. Some men tuck their hands between their thighs or into their crotch, wherever the body heat is strongest. There's no wrong answer, just different strategies for the same problem. As the cocoon takes shape, as the layers compress, and the bodies settle into their positions, you feel something shift. The cold is still there, still pressing in from every direction, but it's no longer winning. You've created a small pocket of resistance, a tiny fortress of warmth in the middle of an ocean of ice. It's not comfortable. Your hip still aches. Your shoulder still hurts. The deck is still impossibly hard. But you're no longer in immediate danger. Your body can stop fighting quite so hard. Your muscles can release some of their tension. This is when sleep becomes possible. Not guaranteed, but possible. Your mind begins to drift in that particular way it does when exhaustion finally overcomes discomfort. Images float up your wife's face, your daughter's laugh, the smell of bread, baking the warmth of a hearth fire. You don't chase these images. You let them come and go like waves, like the swell of the sea beneath the ship. Halvard mutters something. You can't make out the words, but the tone is peaceful. He's already slipping away, entering whatever dreams await him. You envy him a little. He's younger. His body recovers faster, finds rest more easily. But you also feel protective of him. In this moment, your shoulder pressed against his, your warmth mixing with his. These bonds form out here, bonds that have nothing to do with friendship in the usual sense, and everything to do with survival, with the simple fact that you're keeping each other alive, one cold night at a time. The ship rocks. The Hudfat rocks with it. You've become part of the ship's motion now, your body swaying with the hull, your breathing synchronized to the rhythm of the waves. There's something almost hypnotic about it, this endless rocking, this constant gentle movement that never stops, never changes, just continues in its ancient pattern like a lullaby. The ocean has been singing since before there were people to hear it. You feel yourself beginning to let go. Not to fall asleep exactly, but to enter that other state, that place between waking and dreaming, where the cold matters less, where the discomfort fades into background noise, where your consciousness grows thin and transparent like morning mist. In this state, you're aware of everything and nothing. You hear the water against the hull, but it becomes music. You feel the cold, but it becomes abstract, a fact without emotional weight. You're still here, still present, but you've retreated into some deep inner room where the self that suffers is separated from the self that endures. The Hadfat holds you. The bodies around you hold you. The ship holds all of you. And beneath the ship, the sea holds everything, rocking you like a mother rocks a child, indifferent to whether you live or die, but steady in its rhythm, constant in its presence, offering not comfort, but something older than comfort, the simple fact of continuing, of motion, of existence itself. You drift. The night deepens. And in your cocoon of hide and wool and human warmth, you find what passes for rest in this hard, cold, beautiful, terrible place that humans have chosen to cross over and over for reasons that seem both perfectly clear and completely mysterious, depending on which moment of the night you ask. Time becomes strange out here. You're not asleep, not exactly, but you're not fully awake either. You exist in a twilight state where consciousness flickers like a candle in wind, sometimes bright, sometimes dim, never quite going out. This is the kind of sleep the sea allows, a half-sleep, a guarded rest, where some part of your brain stays alert, listening for the sounds that mean danger. Your body has found its rhythm now. Your breathing has slowed, deepened, synchronized with the breathing of the men around you. It happens without effort, this synchronization. When you sleep this close to other people, your bodies begin to communicate in ways that bypass thought. Breath matches breath. Heartbeat finds heartbeat. The bundle of humans curled together on the cold deck becomes in some fundamental way a single organism. The numbness in your toes has spread. Your feet are distant countries, now places you know exist but can't quite feel. This should worry you, but it doesn't. You've learned to distinguish between the numbness that's dangerous and the numbness that's just your body's way of coping, of conserving heat for the core where the vital organs live. Your feet will ache like broken bones when the blood returns in the morning. But they'll return. Probably. Maybe. You've seen men lose toes to frostbite, watched the black tissue fall away. But you've also seen men recover from numbness you'd have sworn was fatal. The body is strange in its resilience. Sensation arrives in waves. For a few minutes, you're aware of everything. The grain of the wood pressing into your hip, the itch of wool against your neck, the way Halvard's breath has gone sour with bad teeth, the distant sound of someone coughing on the other end of the ship. Then the wave recedes, and you drift away again, consciousness dissolving into something that's almost pleasant in its vagueness. In one of these drifting moments, you become intensely aware of your own pulse. You can feel it everywhere, in your fingertips, under your arms, in your neck, in the soft spot behind your knee. Your heart is working hard, pumping blood through constricted vessels, fighting to keep warmth distributed to limbs that want to shut down. The rhythm is steady, strong, a drumbeat that's been playing since before you were born, and will play until the moment it doesn't. You think about this sometimes in the deep night, how your life is nothing but this rhythm, this beating, this pulse that continues without your permission or participation. You could decide to stop breathing, but you can't decide to stop your heart. It belongs to forces older than decision, older than thought. And right now, pressed against Halvard's beating heart and Eric's beating heart, you can feel that truth in a way that's almost overwhelming. You're all just pulses in the dark, just rhythms trying to continue, just meat and blood and stubborn persistence. The cold creeps in despite everything. It's patient, the cold. It doesn't attack like a storm. It just waits, pressing in from every direction, finding the tiny gaps in your defenses. A bit of skin exposed at the wrist, where your sleeve has ridden up. The place where your hood doesn't quite meet your cloak. The seam where two pieces of leather are stitched together and the thread has shrunk, leaving a hairline gap. Through these openings, the cold enters in thin streams, like water finding cracks in a dam. You adjust without fully waking. Pull the sleeve down, shift the hood, press closer to halvard. These movements are automatic, now performed by the part of your brain that handles survival, while your conscious mind drifts elsewhere. This is how you sleep out here, your body on guard, your mind elsewhere. The two parts of you operating in shifts like the watch on deck. Someone moves on the other side of the ship. You hear the scrape of wood on wood, a muttered curse. The sound of someone trying to find a position that doesn't hurt quite as much. You recognize the voice. It's Olaf, the oldest man in the crew, past 50. If he's a day, his bones brittle with age and cold. He suffers more than the younger men, needs more time to warm up in the morning moves, like every joint is grinding bone on bone. But he's here anyway, making this crossing because he has grandchildren in Greenland he wants to see one more time before he dies. You respect that. Everyone does. When Olaf takes his turn at the oar, men row a little harder to make up for his weakness. When he gets the best spot to sleep, no one complains. This is how it works out here. The strong protect the weak. Not out of kindness necessarily, but out of the knowledge that strength is temporary, that everyone becomes weak eventually, that the community that protects its weakest members is the community that survives. The ship shudders slightly, just a small movement, a change in the pattern of the waves. Your body registers it immediately, every muscle tensing, waiting to see if this is something that requires action. But the shudder passes. The rhythm returns to normal, and your body slowly releases its tension. False alarm. Just the sea doing what the sea does, reminding you that it's bigger than you, stronger than you, that your survival is contingent on its momentary indifference. In your half-sleep, you have the strange thought that you and the ship are the same. Both of you are just collections of pieces held together by faith and friction. Both of you, flexing and groaning under pressure. Both of you, leaking slowly. Both of you requiring constant attention to stay intact. The ship needs bailing and repair. You need food and warmth. The ship has weak points where the planks join. You have weak points in your joints and organs. And both of you are crossing a space that doesn't care whether you make it or not. That will continue exactly as it is, whether you sink or sail, whether you live or die. This thought should be depressing, but somehow it isn't. There's something comforting about being the same as the ship, about sharing its fate so completely that there's no separation between your survival and its survival. You're in this together, you, and this collection of oak and iron and wool, and that partnership feels more real than a lot of the relationships you have on land. Your mind drifts to those relationships. Your wife, her face already starting to blur in your memory, even though you've only been gone 2 months. Your children growing up in your absence, probably forgetting the exact sound of your voice. Your farm, the land you're supposed to be working, but instead have left in the care of your brother, who's probably making decisions you won't agree with, but can't do anything about from here. Part of you misses these things with an ache that's sharper than the cold. But another part, a part you don't like to examine too closely, is relieved to be away from them. Relieved to be in this simple place where the only questions are immediate and the only problems are physical. Out here, you know what you're fighting. You're fighting cold. You're fighting exhaustion. You're fighting the sea's indifference. These are clean enemies, honest enemies. Enemies that don't require complex moral calculations or long-term planning. You either survive the night or you don't. You either make landfall or you die. The simplicity is almost beautiful. But then you feel guilty for thinking this way, for finding peace in a place that's killing you slowly, for preferring the clarity of survival to the messy complexity of family and home. You try to push the thoughts away, but they linger the way uncomfortable truths always linger, refusing to be dismissed. The pulse continues. Your heart, Halvard's heart, Eric's heart, the pulse of the ship through the water, the pulse of the waves, all of it connected, all of it, part of the same rhythm, the same insistence on continuing on, not giving up on beating forward into the next moment, and the next for no reason, except that stopping means ending, and something deep in the human animal refuses to end before it absolutely has to. You drift deeper. The cold recedes a little further. Your consciousness grows thin, stretched between the deck and the stars, between the body that hurts and the mind that doesn't want to be in the body anymore. And in this stretched state, you find something approaching rest, not sleep, but its distant cousin, a kind of suspended animation where time passes without you fully experiencing it, where the night moves forward and you move with it, passive, patient, waiting for whatever comes next, with the fatalism of someone who's learned that control is an illusion anyway. The pulse continues. The night continues. And you continue with it, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat, surviving in the only way that matters, by not stopping by, not giving in, by staying stubbornly alive for one more hour, one more moment, one more breath in the cold dark. The sounds of the night ship create their own language. In the depths of your half-sleep, you begin to hear them as music, as a composition that's been playing for as long as ships have crossed dark water. The air on deck is no longer just air. It has become a tangible weight. You breathe in, and the scent of the ship's tarred ropes, bitter, smoky, and resinous, fills your nostrils, mixing with the damp smell of the oak hull. The boat itself seems to be sweating. You feel a stray drop of condensation fall from the sail above, landing on your forehead with a cold, sharp shock that makes your skin crawl. But then there is the warmth of the man next to you. His breath is a rhythmic puff of heat against the back of your neck, smelling faintly of sour ale and old smoke. This layer of atmosphere is thick, intimate, and dense, a soup of human vapors and sea spray. It is so close, so heavy, that it feels as though you are breathing the ship's own spirit. You find yourself sinking into this sensory weight, letting the smell of salt and sweat and ancient wood pull you down into a deeper, more primal layer of rest. Each sound has its meaning, its place in the symphony. Together, they create a soundscape so familiar that silence would wake you faster than any shout. The primary rhythm is water against wood. It's not one sound, but many layered like voices in a choir. There's the deep slap of waves hitting the bow, a bass note that you feel in your chest as much as here. There's the higher splash when water breaks over the gunwale, a spray of sound that cascades across the deck. There's the constant whisper of the hull parting water, a soft shushing that never stops, like the ship is telling secrets to the sea. Then there are the rope sounds. The rigging thrums when the wind catches it, a low musical note that changes pitch, depending on tension and weather. You can hear it singing now, a soft humming in a key you've come to associate with fair conditions. When the wind picks up, the note will rise, becoming urgent, almost frantic. When the air goes completely still, the ropes go silent, and that silence is somehow worse than any sound, because it means you're dead in the water, drifting at the mercy of currents you can't see or predict. The wood talks constantly. The ship is built to flex, to bend with the waves, and every movement produces sound. There's creaking from the mast when it sways. There's groaning from the keel when the ship rises and falls. There's a particular clicking sound that comes from the overlapped planks shifting against each other, a rapid ticking, like 1,000 small clocks all running at slightly different speeds. At first, these sounds were terrifying signals that the ship was coming apart, failing, about to dump you into the black water. But you've learned to distinguish between normal flex and dangerous stress, between the sounds of a healthy ship and the sounds of one in trouble. Human sounds weave through the maritime ones, snoring, lots of snoring in different pitches and rhythms. There's a man near the bow whose snore sounds like a saw cutting wood, regular and harsh. There's another whose breathing comes in small whistles and sighs almost musical. Someone near you, maybe Eric, makes small clicking sounds in his throat between breaths. These sounds should be annoying, but they're not. They're proof of life, proof that everyone made it through another day, that lungs are still pulling air, that hearts are still beating. Coughing punctuates the night. You've learned to track who's coughing and how often, making mental notes about who might be in trouble. There's the man with the wet, rattling cough who's been getting worse each night. There's another with a dry, hacking cough that sounds painful but isn't as worrying. And there are the normal coughs, the clearing of throats, the temporary irritation from breathing cold air. You've become a diagnostician of coughs, able to judge sickness by sound alone. Someone passes gas, a long musical note that's almost impressive in its duration. A few men laugh soft chuckles that ripple across the ship. It's crude, but it's human, a reminder that even in the midst of this cold trial, the body continues its undignified processes. There's comfort in that, in the persistence of the mundane, even in extreme conditions. The watch shifts again, though you're not sure how much time has passed. Could be an hour, could be 3. Time measurement breaks down out here, becomes meaningless. There's only the cycle of exhaustion and relief, the rotation of who stands and who rests. You hear the quiet exchange of whoever's being relieved. The brief, whispered conversation, passing information. Sea's calm stars are clear. No ice spotted, we're on course. Then the shuffle of someone finding their sleeping spot. The rustle of fabric. The small sounds of a man settling in to steal whatever rest he can. From somewhere comes a sound you can't quite identify at first. Then you realize it's someone weeping, very quietly, trying to muffle it, but the sound carries in the still air. You don't know who it is, and you won't ask in the morning. Everyone has their breaking point, their moment when the accumulation of cold and fear and homesickness becomes too much. The mercy is that it's dark, that anonymity is preserved, that a man can let his grief out without shame, because no one can see his face, no one comments, no one offers comfort. This might seem cruel, but it's actually a kindness. Out here, you learn that some pain is private, that trying to fix it or acknowledge it only makes it worse. So you let the man cry, let him have his moment, and trust that by morning he'll have packed it away again, will be back at his oar will function, will survive. The helmsman hums. You can hear it now, very soft a melody you half recognize. It might be a song his mother sang, or something from a feast hall, or just a tune he's inventing moment by moment to keep himself awake. The sound drifts across the deck like smoke, touching everyone lightly, not demanding attention, but offering it as a gift to anyone who wants to listen. Metal scrapes on wood. Someone's sharpening a blade, or maybe just running a whetstone over a knife edge to give their hands something to do. The rhythm is soothing, steady, a sound that speaks of maintenance of care, of the small acts of preparation that keep you ready for whatever might come. A splash, larger than the others. Something in the water, something big. Everyone stiffens slightly, listening. Could be a whale breaching. Could be a piece of ice carving off a larger berg. Could be nothing, just the sea shrugging. The sound doesn't repeat. The tension slowly drains away. Whatever it was, it's not a threat, not approaching, not interested in the small wooden vessel floating on the surface. You become aware of the sound of your own breathing amplified in the small space created by your hood. It's rhythmic, steady, slower than it would be if you were awake and active. Your body has dropped into its resting state, conserving energy, burning calories at the minimum rate necessary to maintain life. Each breath creates a small cloud of warmth inside your hood, and you can hear the faint sound of moisture condensing on the wool, tiny ice crystals, forming and reforming. Halvard's stomach growls again, long and complicated. Someone else's joins in creating a duet of hunger. You realize your own stomach is empty, has been empty for hours, is consuming itself in the absence of other fuel. But the hunger is distant, abstract. You've learned to ignore it, to accept it as a constant companion, like the cold or the ache in your bones. The ship's bell sounds, one clear note that cuts through all the other sounds. This marks something, though you're not sure what. Maybe the halfway point of a watch. Maybe just a reminder that there's still someone awake still, someone keeping track, still some structure to the night, even though it feels formless. The note fades, slowly absorbed by the vast dark around you. And then, underneath everything, you hear it, the sound you've been unconsciously waiting for. A change in the water sounds a subtle shift in the pattern of waves. It's so slight that you might be imagining it, but your body believes it's real. This is the sound of the sea, beginning to calm, of the night approaching its stillest point. The dead hours before dawn, when even the wind holds its breath. This sound tells you you're past the worst. The deepest cold has come and been endured. Your body has survived its lowest point of the night. From here, imperceptibly at first, but with gathering momentum, things will begin to improve. Not quickly, not dramatically, but the direction has changed. You're no longer descending into deeper cold. You're beginning the slow climb back toward warmth, toward light, toward another day. The sounds continue their symphony. Water and wood and rope and human breath, all of it blending together into the ancient music of people crossing the sea. People refusing to be stopped by darkness or distance or the indifference of the elements. And in this music, in this nocturnal echo of all the crossings that came before and all the crossings that will come after, you find a strange peace, a sense of being part of something much larger than yourself, much older than your individual life, much more important than your personal comfort. You let the sounds wash over you. You let them become your thoughts. And slowly, note by note, wave by wave, heartbeat by heartbeat, you drift deeper into the night, carried by the music of survival, the oldest song the world knows. In the borderland between sleep and waking, the mind does strange things. You're not dreaming, not exactly. Dreams require deeper sleep than the sea allows. But your mind wanders anyway, creating visions that are part memory, part imagination, part hallucination, born from cold and exhaustion. These visions feel more real than dreams, more immediate, as if they're happening now in this moment, overlapping with the deck, and the darkness, and the cold. You're standing in front of your hearth fire. You can see the flames, clearly feel their heat on your face, hear the pop and crackle of pine wood burning. The warmth is overwhelming, almost painful after so long in the cold. You hold your hands toward the fire, watching steam rise from your wet clothes. Feeling sensation return to your fingers in sharp needles of pain. Your wife is behind you. You can sense her presence, though you can't quite turn to look at her. She's cooking something, and the smell makes your mouth water. Bread baking meat, roasting the yeasty smell of ale warming in a pot. But something's wrong. The fire won't stay still. It keeps flickering, fading, becoming transparent. You can see the cold deck through it, see Halvard's sleeping form where the hearthstone should be. You try to focus on the fire to make it solid again through sheer will, but it won't cooperate. It's fading, becoming memory instead of vision, becoming less real with each second. You're walking through snow, deep snow up to your thighs in a forest you recognize from childhood. The trees are heavy with it, their branches bent low, creating a white tunnel. Your breath clouds in front of you, but you're not cold. In this vision, you're dressed warmly, wearing a fur cloak that's actually warm, instead of just layers of damp wool that hold cold more than heat. You're going somewhere important, though you can't remember where. Your father is ahead of you, breaking trail, though your father has been dead for 5 years. He turns and says something, but you can't hear the words. His mouth moves, but only the sound of waves reaches your ears. The vision shifts without transition. You're in a meadow in summer, lying in grass so green it hurts your eyes after all this darkness and ice. The sun is warm on your face, genuinely warm, the kind of warmth that goes all the way through your body and melts the cold out of your bones. Bees hum in the clover. A lark sings somewhere above. Your daughter is small again, maybe 4 years old, running through the grass chasing a butterfly. Her laugh is pure joy, untouched by any knowledge of cold or fear or death. You try to hold this vision to stay in this summer moment, but it's already dissolving. The grass becomes the rough texture of wool against your cheek. The warmth fades back into the ache of cold. Your daughter's laugh transforms into the creak of ship's timber. Your back on the deck have never really left. It were only visiting those other places in the strange country of half-sleep. But the visions keep coming, overlapping now, becoming confused. You're at a feast, the long table crowded with men drinking and eating and telling stories. Someone is telling the story of Sigurd and the dragon, and everyone is listening, leaning forward, caught up in the tale. But the faces keep changing. The man telling the story becomes your brother, becomes a stranger, becomes Eric from your sleeping spot, becomes a corpse with blue lips. You try to look away, but the vision holds you. You're drowning. This vision is different, sharper, more terrifying. You're underwater, looking up at the ship's hull from below, watching it recede into the distance. The water is black and cold and full of things that brush against you in the darkness. You try to swim up, but your wool clothes are heavy, pulling you down. Your lungs burn, your mouth opens against your will, and water rushes in cold as knives. You jerk awake, or halfway awake, your heart racing, your breath coming fast. You're on the deck. You're dry. You're alive. The drowning was just a vision, just your exhausted mind playing out fears. But the fear was real, and it takes several long moments for your heart to slow, for your breathing to steady, for your body to understand that you're not actually dying in dark water. Halvard has shifted in his sleep, rolling slightly away from you. The loss of his warmth is immediate and acute. You consider moving closer, re-establishing contact, but you're too tired. Instead, you just accept the new cold, the way you've learned to accept everything out here. The visions return softer now. You see your mother's hands kneading bread dough. The motion is hypnotic, rhythmic, the dough folding over and over, becoming smooth and elastic. You used to watch her do this as a child, standing at her elbow, waiting for the piece of dough she'd tear off and let you shape into whatever you wanted. Usually, an animal, a snake, or a bird, something that would bake hard and sweet and be your prize. You're in church, standing in the back, listening to the priest chant in Latin words you don't understand. The sound is soothing anyway. The rise and fall of the ancient language, the way the words echo off stone walls. Someone is being baptized. Maybe one of your children. Maybe someone else's child. Maybe no one. Maybe this is just the memory of baptisms combined into a single vision. You see ships. Not this ship, but others. A whole fleet of them, their sails red against a grey sky, moving in formation across open water. You're watching from shore, though you're also on one of the ships, experiencing both perspectives simultaneously. The ships are beautiful in their purposefulness, in their determination, in the way they press forward against wind and wave and all the resistance the sea can offer. Then you're a child again, very young, being carried on someone's shoulders, your father probably. You can see the top of his head, his thinning hair, and beyond that, the sky, enormous and blue. You're laughing about something, the pure, uninhibited laugh of a child who doesn't yet know that the world is hard, that life is cold, that people die on ships in the middle of the ocean. The visions are coming faster now, tumbling over each other, creating a kind of collage of memory and fear and hope. Your wedding day, your wife's nervous smile, a fight you had once, her angry tears, your stupid pride. The first time you held your newborn son, the terrifying fragility of him, the weight of new responsibility. A funeral, though you can't remember whose, just the cold earth and the ritual words and the finality of it. You see land. Green hills rising from grey water. Trees, the first trees you've seen in weeks. A beach of black sand where you could pull the ship up and finally rest. But you don't know if this is vision or memory or hope or prophecy. The land might be real, might be where you're heading, might be waiting just beyond the horizon. Or it might be nothing, just your mind showing you what you desperately want to see. A sound pulls you back toward the surface of consciousness. Someone is singing very softly, You can't make out the words, but the melody is old, something from childhood, a lullaby maybe. The sound anchors you, gives your wandering mind something to hold onto. You focus on it, letting it keep you from drifting too far into the visions, from losing yourself completely in the country of half sleep. The singing fades. Or maybe it was never there. Maybe it was just another vision, another trick your exhausted brain is playing. But it doesn't matter. It served its purpose. You're more present now, more aware of the deck beneath you, the cold around you, the breathing of the men nearby. But the veil between waking and sleeping is thin, so thin, and your mind keeps slipping through the gaps, visiting other places, other times, other versions of yourself. You let it wander. What else can you do? Fighting. It takes energy you don't have. Better to just let go, to drift, to exist in this liminal space where memory and vision and reality blend into something that's none of those things and all of them at once. And in this, drifting in this space between dream and waking, you find a kind of rest that's different from sleep, but just as necessary. Your body stays on the frozen deck, but your mind roams free, visiting warm places, safe places, places where you're loved and needed and whole. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all anyone can ask for out here. A few hours of escape, even if that escape is only in your head, even if you wake up exactly where you fell asleep, cold and aching and still far from home. The veil thins further. You drift deeper, and the night holds you patient and indifferent, while your mind wanders through its gallery of ghosts and memories and might-have-beens, waiting for the dawn that will eventually come and call you back to the hard, cold, undeniable reality of this ship, this voyage, this life. Something happens in the deepest hours that's hard to put into words. As you lie there, the boundaries of your self begin to blur. You feel the warmth of the man to your left and the steady oar rhythm of the man to your right. And you realize you can no longer tell where your heat ends and theirs begins. It is a profound dissolution of the ego. In the modern world, we are so often alone in our comfort, but here you are, part of a singular pulsing heat source. You feel the warm blood coursing through your own veins, but it feels connected to the blood in theirs, a single river of life flowing through 30 hearts. There is a quiet, overwhelming joy in this, a goosebump moment of realization that life is not a solitary flame, but a shared fire. You are not just a sailor. You are a thread in a living tapestry held together by the gravity of mutual survival. This silent collective heartbeat is more powerful than any storm, a quiet defiance against the cold that says, we are here. We are together. We are one. You become aware in your half-sleep of how closely connected you are to these men around you. Not connected by choice or friendship necessarily, but connected by the simple fact that you're all trying to survive the same impossible thing. This connection runs deeper than words, deeper than conscious thought. It's woven into the way your bodies press together, the way your breathing synchronizes, the way you unconsciously adjust your position when someone else shifts. Halvard is shivering. You feel it through the layers, a fine tremor running through his body. He's colder than you are, burning through his reserves faster. Without thinking, without fully waking, you shift closer, pressing your back against his chest, sharing your warmth more directly. He stops shivering after a while. The tremor eases, becomes stillness again. Neither of you will mention this in the morning. Neither of you will acknowledge that one helped the other. This is just what you do. This is how you survive. On your other side, Eric has wrapped his hand around your ankle. You're not sure when he did this or why, but you can feel his fingers through your boot, a gentle pressure that says, "You're there. I'm here. We're not alone." It's such a small thing, this touch, but it matters more than you can explain. In the vast, dark emptiness of the ocean, in the cold that wants to isolate each person into their own private death, this contact is everything. It's proof that you're still part of the human world, still tethered to something other than your own failing body. You think about the men you don't know well on this ship, the quiet one who never speaks except when spoken to, the loud one who tells the same stories over and over, the one with the scarred hands who flinches when the waves break over the side, the young one who's never made this crossing before and is terrified though he tries to hide it. In another context, you might never have spoken to. These men might have nothing in common with them, might actively dislike some of them. But out here, those distinctions disappear. You're bound together by circumstance and need, by the fact that you're all equally vulnerable, equally small against the indifference of the sea. The loud man's stories, which seem annoying on land out here, they're a gift, a distraction from the cold and fear. The quiet man's silence isn't standoffish. It's just his way of conserving energy, of managing his own fear. The scared young man's terror isn't weakness, it's honesty. It's having the courage to feel what everyone feels, but many hide. You realize in this moment of strange clarity that you'd die for any of these men. Not because you love them, but because their survival and your survival are the same thing. If the ship goes down, you all go down. If the food runs out, you all starve. There's no individual safety out here, only collective survival. And that knowledge creates a bond that's stronger than friendship, older than love, primal in its intensity. Someone coughs the wet, racking cough that's been getting worse. You find yourself hoping he makes it, this sick man you barely know. Not just because his death would be sad, but because it would be a failure of the group, a crack in the collective shield you've all built against the cold and the sea. When one man weakens, everyone weakens. When one man dies, part of everyone dies. The ship creaks, and you all shift together unconsciously, adjusting to the movement in perfect coordination. You've become one organism, one breathing, shifting, surviving thing. The ship is your shell. The men are your organs. The collective will to continue is your heartbeat. And in this unity, in this forced intimacy, you've found something that civilized life back home has lost, the absolute dependence on each other, that creates real community, not the polite version, but the desperate version, the kind that means life or death. You think about the fights you've had on land, the grudges you've held, the petty resentments that seemed so important. They seem absurd now, almost laughable. What did it matter that your neighbor's goat ate your cabbage? What did it matter that your brother got the better field when you divided your father's land? Out here, you'd share your last bite of food with your worst enemy if he needed it to survive. Because his survival is your survival. Because you're all in the same leaking boat, literally and metaphorically. This thought leads to another. What if you brought this understanding home with you? What if you remembered when you're warm and fed and safe, that all of you are still in the same boat, still dependent on each other, still small and vulnerable against forces larger than yourselves? Would you fight less? Forgive more easily? help more readily, but you know you won't. Or if you do, it won't last. The comfort of land makes you forget. The abundance of summer makes you selfish. The walls of your house make you believe you're separate, independent, safe. It takes the stripping away of all that comfort, all that safety, all that separation to remember the truth you're not alone. You've never been alone. Humanity is one giant huddle in the cold, and the only thing that's ever kept any of you alive is the willingness to share warmth with each other. Halvard murmurs something in his sleep. It sounds like a name, maybe his wife's, maybe his mother's. The sound is tender, vulnerable, in a way he'd never allow if he was awake. You feel protective of him in this moment, this strong man revealing his softness in sleep. You hope whoever he's dreaming about is safe, is warm, is waiting for him. You hope he makes it home to them. A wave of emotion hits you unexpectedly, making your throat tight. It's not sadness exactly, and not happiness, but something more complex. A fierce love for these men, for this ship, for the stubborn human habit of venturing into places that want to kill you and refusing to die. You're proud of them, all of them, including yourself. Proud that you're here, that you're enduring, that you haven't given up, though giving up would be easier. And you're grateful. This is the strange part, the part that makes no sense. You're grateful for this cold, this hardship, this endless night, because it's shown you something true about yourself and about people in general. It's shown you that humans are capable of extraordinary things when they have to be, that the body can endure far more than you'd think, that the mind can find peace even in awful circumstances. That connection with others is not a luxury, but a necessity, not a choice, but a survival tool, not something nice to have, but the very foundation of what keeps you alive. The threads that connect you to these men, to this ship, to this moment, they're not visible. You can't see them or touch them, but you feel them as clearly as you feel the cold, as clearly as you feel Halvard's shivering body against yours and Eric's hand on your ankle. These threads are woven through every shared breath, every synchronized heartbeat, every moment of mutual endurance. And you understand in a way you couldn't have understood before this voyage that this is what life actually is. Not the individual moments of triumph or tragedy, not the achievements or failures that seem so important when they happen. Life is this, the slow weaving of threads between one person and another, the gradual construction of a net that catches you when you fall, that holds you up when you're too weak to stand, that connects you to something larger and more enduring than your single, fragile, temporary self. The night deepens. The threads grow stronger, and you lie there in the cold, surrounded by sleeping, breathing, suffering, enduring men. And you're not alone. You've never been alone. You're part of a pattern so old and so large that individual threads might break, but the whole thing never does. It just keeps weaving itself forward, night by night, voyage by voyage, generation by generation, holding all of you in its ancient, unbreakable embrace. The quality of the darkness begins to change. The stars begin to pale, their sharp edges softening into a ghostly blur. In the old legends, this is the time when the sea wanderers, the spirits of the drowned, retreat back into the deep trenches, yielding the surface to the living. As the stars fade, you feel a sense of solemnity, as if a great audience is slowly leaving the theatre. The ancient sailors believed that a star's fading was a sign of a spirit's blessing, a silent, well done for surviving the trial of the night. You watch the last of the celestial fires go out, feeling a strange melancholy. The night was a harsh teacher, but it was also a sacred space where the world was reduced to its purest elements. It's not lighter, not yet, but there's a difference you can feel more than see. The stars that were so sharp and bright have softened slightly, as if a thin veil has been drawn across them. The blackness of the sky has shifted from pure black to something fractionally less absolute. A dark grey that's still so dark it's almost indistinguishable from black. But your eyes, adapted to the night, can sense the difference. This is the hour before dawn, the moment when the night has exhausted itself, when the cold has done its worst and found itself unable to finish you off, when the darkness begins its slow, reluctant retreat. It's not victory yet. Dawn is still far away. But it's the promise of victory, the first hint that this night, like all the nights before, it will eventually end. Your body knows this change before your mind does. Some ancient part of your nervous system that's been tracking the hours of darkness registers the shift and begins to prepare for day. Your breathing changes slightly, becomes less the deep, slow rhythm of sleep and more the varied pattern of waking. Your muscles, locked in their nighttime positions, begin to think about movement, about the painful process of unfolding from the protective curl you've maintained for hours. You become aware of pain in a more specific way. During the deepest night, pain was general, everywhere, a total experience. But now, it locates itself. Your right hip is the worst, pressed against the hard deck for so long that the bone feels like it's grinding directly against wood. Your left shoulder has a deep ache from being compressed under your body weight. Your neck is stiff from the angle you've been holding it. Your lower back is locked into a position that you know will take careful stretching to undo. But you don't move yet. Moving would disturb. Halvard would disturb. Eric would break the careful arrangement of shared warmth that's kept all of you alive. And anyway, moving would cost energy, would expose skin to cold air, would require effort that you're not ready to expend yet. So you lie, still cataloguing your pains, like a merchant counting inventory, acknowledging each one, but not yet acting on any of them. The helmsman at the stern shifts his position for the first time in hours. You hear the groan of his joints, the small sound of breath released, the creak of leather and wood, as stiff limbs remember how to move. He's probably in worse shape than anyone standing in one position all night, the cold settling into his bones like water into a sponge. But he's held his post, kept the ship on course, maintained the single thread of purpose that connects this night to the next day. Somewhere on the deck, a man is waking. You hear the sounds of it, the catch of breath, as consciousness returns, the small moan of someone discovering how much their body hurts, the rustle of fabric, as someone tries to shift position. Then stillness again. He's awake, but not ready to face waking, lying there in that liminal space, putting off the moment when he'll have to move, have to function, have to be a sailor, instead of just a cold, suffering creature curled on a deck. The stars continue to fade. You focus on one in particular, a bright one you've been using as a reference point throughout the night. You watch it dim degree by degree as the sky around it slowly lightens from black to charcoal to slate. This star has been a companion through the dark hours, a fixed point in the turning sky. Soon it will disappear, entirely lost in the brightness of day. But for now, it's still there, still visible, still marking time. You think about all the other people who've watched stars fade at dawn. Sailors on other ships, in other seas, in other centuries. Shepherds keeping watch over flocks. Travelers caught between destinations. Guards standing their lonely posts. Prisoners staring through bars at a sky that offers no escape. Lovers reluctant to end the night. The dying watching their last stars fade. The newborn seeing stars for the first time. All of humanity stretched across time, connected by the simple act of watching darkness give way to light. This thought is comforting in a way that's hard to articulate. You're not alone in this watching. You're not the first to endure a cold night at sea. You're not the first to wonder if dawn will actually come, or if the night will continue forever. Thousands, millions of people have been exactly where you are, now have felt exactly what you're feeling, have survived it, and gone on to have more days, more nights, more dawns. You're part of a line that stretches back to the first humans who crossed water in floating logs, and forward to humans not yet born who'll cross seas in ways you can't imagine. The cold is different now too. It's still cold, still working its way into your bones, still trying to stop your heart. But it's lost its aggressive edge. During the deepest night, the cold felt active, malicious, like a living thing trying to kill you. Now it's just a fact, a condition, something that exists without intention or malice. The difference is subtle but real. The cold has done its worst. You're still here. That changes the dynamic between you and it. Halvard is waking. You feel the change in his breathing, the slight increase in muscle tension, the small movements that signal the return of consciousness. In a moment, he'll pull away, breaking the connection you've maintained all night. Part of you wants to hold on to keep that warmth a little longer. But you know it's time. The night is ending. The collective body you've formed needs to separate back into individual bodies, each responsible for getting itself through the day ahead. He moves slowly, carefully, with small sounds of pain. The loss of his warmth is immediate and shocking. Cold air rushes into the space his body occupied, and you have to resist the urge to curl tighter to try to hold onto the heat. Instead, you force yourself to relax, to accept the cold, to begin your own process of waking. Eric's hand is still on your ankle. You move your foot slightly gently, signaling that you're awake, that the connection can be released. His hand withdraws, and you feel the loss of even that small contact. The night has been a lesson in connection. Dawn is a lesson in separation. Both are necessary. Both are hard. You open your eyes fully for the first time in hours. The world is still dark, but it's the darkness of late night, not deep night. You can see shapes, now outlines the difference between the deck and the sky, between the mast and the stars. The ship is taking form around you, emerging from the undifferentiated blackness, like a sculpture emerging from stone. Other men are stirring. You hear it all around you, the sounds of bodies protesting movement, of joints cracking, of breath hissing through clenched teeth as frozen limbs remember how to function. No one speaks yet. Speech will come later, when the sun is up and the day has properly begun. Right now, everyone is too focused on the private pain of waking the personal battle with cold and stiffness, and the awful knowledge that this was just one night, and there will be another night, and another, and another, until you finally reach land or the sea claims you. You think about standing. Not yet, but soon. The act of standing will be agonizing, you know this from experience. Your legs have been bent for hours. The blood has pooled in strange places. Your muscles have shortened. When you first try to straighten your body, it will feel like breaking, like tearing, like your joints are fused and your tendons are made of ice. But you'll do it anyway, because lying here forever isn't an option, because the ship needs to be sailed, because survival requires movement, even when movement is torture. The first bird calls. You hear it clearly, a sound so normal and so surprising that it takes a moment to register. A seabird probably circling above the ship, invisible in the darkness, but audible. The sound is lonely and beautiful, a reminder that there's life in this cold, empty space, that the ocean isn't as dead as it seems during the long night. The stars fade further. The sky is definitely lighter now, a change that's unmistakable. You can see the faces of the men around you, or the suggestion of faces, the places where darkness is less dark, where features hide waiting to be revealed by light. These are the men you've survived with. These are the faces you'll remember when this voyage is a story you tell in your old age, when the details have faded, but the feeling remains. You take a deep breath, feeling your lungs expand, feeling the cold air enter your body and steal heat even as it brings oxygen. Your heart is still beating. Your blood is still moving. You've made it through another night. That's not a small thing. That's everything, actually. That's the whole point of all of this, to keep beating, keep breathing, keep moving forward through darkness, toward light, through night, toward day, through winter, toward spring, through despair, toward hope. The stars are fading, the night is ending, and you're still here. In the final hour before dawn, time becomes something other than itself. You float in a space where past and present and future blur together, where the ship you're on becomes every ship, where the night you're enduring becomes every night. The specificity fades, and what's left is just the essence of the experience. Cold endurance waiting hope. You think about the other sailors who've made this crossing. Not the ones on this ship, but the ones who came before. The first Viking who looked at the horizon and thought, what if I just kept going? What if the world doesn't end where the shore ends? What made him brave enough, or desperate enough, or curious enough to push into the unknown? And the sailors who came after him following the route, he found repeating his journey, but adding their own stories to it. Each crossing writing itself over the ones before, creating a palimpsest of voyages, a layering of human determination across cold water. You're part of that layering now. Your cold night is writing itself over their cold nights, and someday another sailor will write over yours, and the story will continue the same story, but always different, always new. The ship rocks in its ancient rhythm, and you feel yourself dissolving into that rhythm, becoming less an individual and more a pattern, a repetition, a note in a song that's been playing since humans first trusted themselves to floating wood. You're you, but you're also everyone who's ever been. You, everyone who's ever shivered on a deck waiting for dawn. Everyone who's ever wondered if they'd see another sunrise. Your daughter's face appears in your mind, but it's overlaid with other faces. Your mother's face when she was young. Your grandmother's face, though you never knew your grandmother, she died before you were born. But you can see her anyway, see the genetic echo of yourself in her features, the same nose, the same eyes, the same expression of quiet determination. She crossed water too in her time, came to a new land, made a new life. You carry her courage in your blood, and your son, your strong boy, who wanted to come on this voyage, but was too young, too untested. You can see his face growing older, becoming a man's face, becoming a face that will someday look out at the sea and think about crossing it. He'll remember these stories you'll tell him about the cold and the stars, and the men who kept each other alive. And maybe he'll be brave enough to make his own crossing, to add his own chapter to this endless story. The line stretches forward and backward, ancestors and descendants, the ones who came before and the ones who'll come after, all of them connected by this simple act, putting themselves in a fragile boat on a dangerous sea, and trusting that they're strong enough, or lucky enough, or stubborn enough to reach the other side. You think about the land you left, Norway with its deep fjords and steep mountains and valleys, where the sun only shines a few hours a day in winter. That land shaped you, made you into someone who understands cold, who isn't afraid of darkness, who knows how to endure. The people there have been crossing seas for generations because the land itself is an island, because you can't go anywhere without crossing water, because the sea is as much home as the shore. And the land you're going to, if you make it, Greenland, with its ice and its harsh beauty, and its tiny communities clinging to the coast like barnacles to a rock. People survive there too, against all odds. They've built homes in places that seem designed to prevent human life. They've made gardens in soil that barely supports grass. They've created warmth in the coldest place on Earth. If they can do that, surely you can survive one more night on this ship. The ship is a bridge between these lands. It's also a bridge between who you were when you left and who you'll be when you arrive. The voyage is changing you even now, even in this moment of cold and pain and exhaustion. You're learning things about yourself that you couldn't have learned on land. You're discovering reserves of strength you didn't know you had. You're understanding the value of small things, a bit of warmth, a sip of water, a moment without pain. These lessons will stay with you. When you're old, sitting by a fire, the colder memory, instead of a reality, you'll still remember this night. You'll remember the exact quality of the cold, the exact position of the stars, the exact feeling of Halvard's shivering body against yours. And these memories will inform everything else in your life. They'll make you grateful for warmth. They'll make you patient with hardship. They'll make you generous with your strength because you've known what it's like to need someone else's strength to survive. The stars are almost gone now. Just the brightest ones remain, and even those are fading fast. The sky has gone from black to grey, from grey to a colour that might be blue if you had more light to see it by. The horizon is starting to separate itself from the sea, a line emerging from the uniform darkness, a boundary between water and air, between one element and another. You watch this line form, watch the world separate back into its component parts after a night of undifferentiated blackness. There's something deeply satisfying about this, about seeing order emerge from chaos, about watching the world remake itself according to rules you can understand. The sea is down. The sky is up. The ship is between them. You are on the ship. These simple facts, obvious in daylight but lost in darkness, reassert themselves. And with this reassertion comes a shift in your mental state. The strange timelessness of the deep night is fading. You're becoming specific, again, particular individual. You're not every sailor who ever lived. You're just you, one man on one ship on one specific morning. This is both a loss and a relief. The cosmic connection was profound, but it was also overwhelming. Being just yourself again with your specific pains and worries and hopes is almost comfortable. The man with the terrible cough coughs again, but this time it sounds less alarming. Maybe that's just hope speaking. Maybe you want so badly for him to be okay that you're hearing improvement where there is none. Or maybe he really is better. Maybe he's tough enough to fight through whatever is settling in his lungs. Maybe he'll make it. That word, maybe. It's been the word of this whole voyage, the word of every voyage. Maybe you'll make landfall. Maybe the weather will hold. Maybe the food will last. Maybe you're strong enough. Maybe your luck will hold. Maybe. Living in uncertainty in the space between fear and hope, never knowing which way things will tip until they actually tip. But maybe is better than no. Maybe contains hope. Maybe leaves room for possibility. Maybe is what gets you through the night, through the voyage, through a life that's full of cold and danger and uncertainty. Maybe is the word that keeps you rowing when your arms are numb. Maybe is the word that keeps you breathing when your lungs ache with cold. Maybe is the light at the end of the tunnel, dim and distant but real. The sky lightens further. You can see color, now faint suggestions of it. The water is dark blue instead of black. The deck is brown instead of a generic dark. Halvard's cloak is actually red, you can see that now, a deep red like old blood. Eric's beard is lighter than you thought, almost blonde in the growing light. Everything is becoming specific, again detailed, particular. The night was a great eraser, removing details, making everything the same undifferentiated dark. But day is a revealer, bringing back the world in all its variety and complexity. You watch this happen, this daily miracle of light returning, and even though you've seen it thousands of times, even though you know exactly how it works, it still feels like magic. Because it is magic, in a way. It's the magic of continuation of things going on, of the world, refusing to end despite the night's best efforts. The sun will rise again. It always does. And as long as it keeps rising, you keep going. As long as there's another dawn, there's another day. As long as there's another day, there's hope. The timeless drift of the deep night is ending. You're returning to the world of hours and minutes, of tasks and duties, of the specific demands of survival. But you carry something from that drift with you, some understanding that's deeper than words, some connection to the long line of humans who've endured cold nights and emerged into warm mornings. You're part of that line. You're a link in that chain. And someday, maybe soon, maybe in the distant future, you'll add your own name to the story. You'll become one of the ancestors that someone else remembers. One of the crossings that someone else honors. One of the lights that guide someone else through their own dark night. The stars fade. The ship rocks. And the ancient pattern continues as it always has, as it always will, carrying you forward on the slow tide of time toward whatever morning holds. The first light touches the horizon soft as a whisper. It's not the sun yet, just the promise of it. The sky turning from grey to pale gold. The darkness retreating inch by inch, surrendering to something older and more patient than itself. The night has done what nights do. It has tested you, worn you down, asked the fundamental question of whether you're strong enough to see another day. And you've answered without words, with the simple fact of your continued breath, your beating heart, your open eyes. Around you, the ship is waking in slow motion. Men uncurl from their sleeping positions like ancient creatures returning to life after hibernation. There are groans, quiet curses, the sound of joints cracking, and muscles protesting. No one speaks loudly yet. The morning feels too fragile for loud sounds, too new to disturb with anything harsh. You don't stand immediately. You just lie there, watching the light grow, feeling warmth begin to return to the world. It's not much warmth yet, just a degree or two. But after the deep night, even this small increase feels like a gift. The cold is still there, still pressing in from every side, but it's lost its teeth. You've survived its worst. Everything else is just endurance. Halvard sits up beside you, moving slowly like an old man. He doesn't look at you, doesn't acknowledge the night you shared, the warmth you exchanged, the survival you managed together. This is how it is. The bonds formed in darkness don't need to be spoken about in the light. They just exist silent and strong, woven into the fabric of who you are now. The helmsman calls out, his voice rough from disuse. He's spotted something land maybe, or just a change in the water that signals you're still on course. It doesn't matter what he's seen. What matters is the sound of his voice, proof that he made it through the night, that the ship stayed true, that the journey continues. You think about standing now. Your body resists, but you push through the resistance, unfolding yourself, joint by joint, muscle by muscle, until you're vertical. The world spins slightly, then settles. Your legs remember how to bear weight. Your back remembers how to be straight. You're damaged but functional, hurt but alive. And that's enough. That's all it ever needs to be. The dawn spreads across the water like spilled gold, touching everything, transforming the ship from a dark shell into a living vessel full of men who refused to die, who made it through one more night. You look at them, these sailors, these survivors, these ordinary men who did an extraordinary thing, simply by continuing to breathe, to endure, to trust that morning would come. And it did. It always does. The world keeps turning. The sun keeps rising. And humans keep crossing impossible distances on fragile boats, because that's what humans do. They dream of distant shores, they build vessels to carry them, and they survive nights that should kill them through nothing more than stubbornness and the warmth of shared humanity. The ship rocks, the light grows, and somewhere ahead, invisible but real land waits. Home waits. Warmth waits. Another story waits to be added to the long chain of stories about people who looked at the horizon and said, I wonder what's beyond that. I wonder if I'm strong enough to find out. You are. You were. The night proved it. The morning confirms it. And the next night, when it comes, will test you again. But now you know something you didn't know before. You can endure. You can survive. You can make it through darkness into light, through cold into warmth, through fear into hope. The stars have disappeared completely now, hidden by the brightness of day. But they're still there, still burning, still marking their ancient patterns across a sky you can't see anymore. They'll return tonight, faithful as always, and you'll navigate by them again, trusting their constancy, their refusal to change their promise that some things endure. The journey continues. The ship sails on, and you sail with it, carrying the night inside you, like a secret, like a strength you didn't know you had, like a story that will warm you when you're old. And the cold nights are just memories, and you sit by a fire, telling your grandchildren about the time you crossed the winter sea and survived, and how the stars looked, and how the men kept each other alive, and how the dawn came slow and patient and inevitable. The way dawn always comes, the way it's always come, the way it always will. Rest now. Let the rhythm of the waves carry you. Let the light hold you. Let the morning wrap around you like a blanket warmer than any wool. You've earned this. You've survived the night. And the story continues, breath by breath, wave by wave, sunrise by sunrise, as it has always continued, as it will always continue, carrying you forward toward whatever shore awaits, patient and timeless and endless as the sea itself. Good night.